Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. This is part 2, well actually part B of part 2 of my story of being in rehab and my 7 months away from home. So enjoy the video and I will see you again in the next video for part 3. Then her next question was, do you want to go home? So when she asked that, Jean and I kind of looked at each other like, I think that's kind of obvious. I mean, so I said to her, yeah, I want to go home. I mean, I'm laying here. I'm not receiving physical therapy. I've had no physical therapy in about a month and a half now. I'm just laying here taking up space. So there's absolutely no reason for me to be laying here. I can go home and lay in bed and do the same thing. She said that she would start on the paperwork. We went through everything that I would need. She made a list of like a walker, a bed, all these things that I would need. And she said she needed a week's notice that they would get the ambulance set up because I was coming home by ambulance because I hadn't been out of bed again since the end of November. And obviously I wasn't walking and I hadn't even set up in bed. So I was naturally going to need an ambulance to bring me home. She said she'd take care of all of that, and my discharge would be on the 19th. So I'm assuming it was the 12th that we had this conversation because a week would be the 19th, I'm assuming. My dates are a little foggy now because there were so many of them. I can't remember all of them. So we made all these arrangements, and then she said she would get back with me about, I forget which of the things. She said there was something that she had to get back with me and let me know, and then we would go from there. And I said that was fine. I forget what exactly it was. I didn't hear from her again. Then it was the Tuesday, so it was like 4 days again before discharge. And again, I hadn't heard anything. So I called and I asked to speak to the social worker that I was working with. And the other social worker let me know that she was not there and they didn't know when or if she would return. I don't know why she wasn't there. I don't know if she has returned afterwards. But that social worker that I set everything up with was now gone. So she asked if she could help me with something, and I told her the issue. And she said she had no notes of anything. She didn't, there was nothing ordered. There was nothing, she had no knowledge of what had went on from the other social worker. So the 19th was obviously canceled because there was nothing in progress. So she said she would work on it. We would make it for the next 7 days. She needed a week. We discussed what I needed. We discussed everything that I discussed with the other social worker. She said she would get on it. Fine. So that leads us up to, let's see, that was the 19th. That was supposed to be released 7 days after that. Would have been, I don't know, guys. Help me with the math. 20-something. I think it was the 29th was, I'm pretty sure it was the January 29th was, I was supposed to be released again. I don't know. The dates, like I said, don't quote me on the dates. So I was like, okay, this is cool. Good. So everything was in order. Some of the stuff I needed, it came. No walker, no bed yet. Excuse me. So they had set the ambulance up. It would be there at 2 p.m. on the Friday to pick me up. And everything seemed hopeful. Then the next week on a Tuesday again, I hadn't heard anything about the bed. There was still no bed. I had already had a hospital bed at my apartment because they had sent it when they thought I was going to come home from the hospital, directly from the hospital to home. So it was sitting at my home. The first time when we scheduled to have me sent home from the rehab hospital, when this whole thing started, this is kind of confusing. They said I needed to return that bed and that they would have the company send another bed, a different bed. It had to be reordered or something because that was from the hospital. This is from the rehab facility. I don't know. I don't understand. But we were, okay, this is what has to happen. They came, picked up the bed, took it back. So there was no bed. And on that Tuesday, I called the social worker because I was a little concerned because no bed had arrived. And there was no walker. And, of course, I wouldn't need the walker right away because I'm obviously not getting out of bed at that time. So I called the social worker. She said typically, the bed is delivered the day before or the day of discharge, and that not to worry, everything would be fine. I said, okay, cool. I was worrying, but I was trying to be hopeful. So then Thursday came, the day before discharge, still no bed, and so I called. Well, actually, she called me, and she asked if I had heard anything about the bed. I said no. She said maybe you should give them the company a call, and ask them about the status of the bed and to make sure it's going to be delivered. I found that kind of odd because I assumed that was her responsibility to contact the company. She's a social worker. But I was like, okay, this is fine. So Gene, being the wonderful person that he is, he agreed to be my go-to person and make the call for me. So we contacted them. He contacted them. And they informed us that the bed, because it's a bariatric bed, was on back order. And they couldn't tell me exactly when the bed would be in. Again, I cannot tell you the disheartenment that I felt at that moment. I cried. And I felt like it was the end of the world. I was so ready to be home. I missed my cats. I missed my home. I was just ready for the circus act to be over and to be home. So I called the social worker back, and we obviously decided that I can't go home because I don't have a bed. So, obviously that discharge date was canceled. And when I heard something about the bed, then we would reschedule the discharge date. So every couple of days, we were calling the company to see what the status was. And then they kept telling us that it was still on back order. I guess the social worker called once to see what the status was. They told her that they had put a new system in place, computer system, and somehow they got locked out of the computer system. This all sounds like, if I wasn't there and experiencing this, and Jean didn't experience it, and my cousin and a couple other people didn't experience this, people would be like, this is an entire lie. You're making this whole thing up because it's just too ridiculous. So they told the social worker that they were locked out of the computer system, the medical supply company, and that they weren't sure when they were going to be able to get back in the system. I found that odd, too, because how can a medical company that supplies medical equipment to hundreds of people in the area, probably thousands of people, just can't get into their system? They told the social worker that the bed hadn't even been ordered yet, when they had told us it was bound back order. I don't know which one was the right story. Whatever, it just wasn't there. So we continued to wait. So then finally the bed was in, and it was ready to be delivered. That brought us up into February, trying to think of the date in February, the 9th or the 7th, perhaps. And then, for whatever reason, it fell through. I was then given this story that the bed was on a truck coming from Canada, and because of the Canadian trucker situation of them protesting at the border, not letting trucks into the United States, my bed was stuck, and it was still on the way. It just hadn't got here yet. So there we are again, waiting. So finally, on the, I don't know, guys, this is like, it was 7 days before the 22nd of February. That's all I know. The bed was in, it was going to be delivered, and they brought the bed. It had to have been on the 19th, the 20th, I believe. And that day, here's another crazy story. The day they delivered the bed to my apartment, the power was out in the building because they were doing, I don't know, some kind of repairs. They're doing a lot of repairs to my building right now. So there was no power. There was one elevator working off of the generator, which was fine. They could get the bed in the elevator and bring it and set it up. They weren't able to test it when they got it here. So Gene said, well, that he would test it when the power came back on. He would let them know if everything was all right. So the power came back on later in the afternoon. Gene tested it. The only thing that was not working was the head does not raise. So he called the company. They immediately sent the guy back out, like probably 15, 20 minutes after Gene called, he was back here. There was some problem with the motor, and they were going to have to replace it. He told Gene that they would overnight the motor, and he would have it, the new one, in the bed before I even come home. Kind of nervous about that, because nothing else has worked out. But at least there was a bed there. There was a place for me to put my big butt in my apartment. So the next day, Gene got up early and was waiting for the guy to come. My discharge time was 2 p.m., and the ambulance would be there to bring me home at that time. It got to be 11, and he'd still heard nothing from the company. He called the company, and the company said that the part had not come in, but I could go ahead and come home because they could change out the motor while I was in the bed, which was fine. I don't mind being reclined for a little while. I just wanted to come home. So another hour passed. 2 hours before I was supposed to come home, the social worker walks into my room, my hospital room. She said, I have some bad news for you. She said, the bed that you received was default, and they were going to have to replace it. She said, do you want to stay? And I said, well, how long is this going to take? She said they couldn't tell me how long it will take. I said, no, I'm good. I have a bed to lay on. I could put pillows under my back. I'm good. I want to go home. So I wanted the circus act to end, and I wanted to go home. So that's what we did. We just went with it. And I'm still waiting for the bed to be fixed, almost a month later. Friday, a new bed came in. Problem with that is they would have to set the new bed up beside this bed, and then I would have to get out and get into the other bed, and then they'd have to take this one. There's not enough room in this room to set up two beds at the same time. So they had to return that, and they were going to wait again for the motor to be ordered, the part that was supposed to be ordered in the first place. So that is the story of the delay in release. I don't know. I basically just laid there taking up space for 2-3 months. December, January, part of February, 2.5 months, I just laid there taking up space. Ridiculous. The social workers still didn't do what they were supposed to do. There was no walker ordered. The social worker informed me that she had tried every home health agency in this valley, as far away as, an hour away. None of them would accept my insurance, which I found odd because I had physical therapy at home about 8 years ago, 7, 8 years ago. And there was never a problem with my insurance. But I thought, things change over the years. I guess that's just the way it is. So I was basically sent home with a bed, the medication that I had left from the hospital, which is about a week's worth of medication, and that's it. I had no walker. I had no other supplies I needed, and that was it. So luckily, I was able to call my doctor. This doctor is a new-to-me doctor from being in the hospital. And at first, they weren't going to be able to help me because I hadn't been to see them. The doctor I have is, I think they're an intern, and they work under a doctor, but they take turns rotating med students. And this doctor, I hadn't been in to see the doctor since 2019, face-to-face in the office. So they weren't going to be able to help me. And I explained my situation where I was bedbound. I needed help. I needed supplies. I needed medicine. So thankfully, they were able to do telehealth with me. And I was able to do like web. They sent me a link for the camera, and we did it that way. And my doctor had absolutely no problem setting me up with home health. None. They set me up with it. She set me up with the medications I needed, and the medication that I was supposed to be taking at the rehab facility that the doctor wanted me to take there. And he was an amazing doctor, very kind. He took the time. He treated you like an actual person. He didn't just talk down to you, or because I was overweight, he didn't just push me through. He was very thorough and very helpful. He's the one that mentioned the Ozempic in the first place. But for whatever reason, I was denied it. My insurance wouldn't cover it while I was there. I'm not sure why. So I told my doctor when I got home about the Ozempic. She was for it. She had heard wonderful things for it. It was just approved by the FDA for weight loss. She said she thought I was the perfect candidate for it, and that she would, it was going to take a lot of documentation for the insurance company to approve it because it's a new drug, it's very expensive, and sometimes they don't want to give you something that's so new. But in my case, being that I am as overweight as I am, as well as diabetic, she thought both of those conditions together, I would have a really good chance of my insurance accepting it and paying for it, which thankfully in the end they did. And that she had no problem with either. She set me up with the rest of the medical supplies I needed, insulin, diabetic blood glucose tester. I mean, she was like on top of everything. My doctor was. And all these things that the rehab facility just dropped the ball on. And we were just basically left to do all this for ourselves. And not that it was a big deal. I have no problem doing these things for myself because they're, things that I needed. But I was told at the rehab facility that they would take care of all that for me, and all of that would be in place when I came home, but none of it was. So it was very disappointing in the end that I pretty much left there in the same condition I went there in. Physical therapy fell through, and it was just very disappointing. The physical therapists weren't that great. And this wasn't just the way they treated me. This is the way they treated other patients as well. They would come into your room and they would say, start doing your leg exercises and I'll be right back. And they would wander off and they would come back and tell me to do my next exercise. And they would get on their phone and text or whatever they were doing on their phones. And it was like there was no guidance. There was no encouragement. And it was just very disheartening. Luckily, the physical therapist I have now that's coming to my home is an amazing man. I think I did more with him in one session than I did with all those physical therapists the months that I was in the rehab hospital. When I told him, I have trouble with my right side because that's the side that I have lymphedema on. This is swollen. My right leg is significantly bigger than my left, my arm, my face, everything. When I told him that I didn't think I was going to be able to do anything with my right leg, he said, well, I'll spot you and we'll do it. We can do it. He was very encouraging. He wanted me to try. When I said that to the physical therapist at the rehab facility, she said, that's okay. Just do your best. She wasn't interested in helping me. She wasn't interested in seeing how we could work around something that I was able to do. I hadn't set up in quite some time. He had me sit up, and luckily I was surprised that I was able to sit up by myself as well as I was for not sitting up for so long. He had me sit on the edge of the bed, and the physical therapist that I had at the rehab facility, she just kind of like, when I said I couldn't sit up, she's like, okay, go ahead, lay back down. And he was encouraging. When I did sit up, we did arm exercises while I was sitting. Very encouraging, and I'm so pleased with him. Occupational therapist came to see me as well. I guess I'll save this part for the next video because this is way long. I'll tell you more about the what I am receiving now, my medications, my physical therapy, my occupational therapy, all that stuff. I'll fill you in on my next video, and also tell you about the bad experience I had with an aide at the rehab facility. She was actually suspended without pay for the way she treated me. So we'll get into that in the next video. This is already way long. So that's my story about how I finally was released and I got to come home. I guess they figured that because you're an obese person, I think that they thought that I would just flip through the cracks. I would just stay there, and I wasn't going to get any better. I didn't want to get better. Obviously, they didn't know any better that I was determined to get better, and I still am. So the whole thing was a bad experience, and very disappointed. And then we'll wrap it up, this series of the woe is me experience from a rehab facility. And I'll ask Gene if he has anything to add next video, and I'll give my closing thoughts, and then we'll move on from there. I have other videos that I want to share with you guys. I don't know if part 3 will be uploaded right after this or if there'll be another video, and then part 3 will be in a couple days. I'm not exactly sure what order they'll go up, but you will see part 3 sooner or later, and sooner than later, actually. So I'll leave you there. I will see you guys again soon. I hope you have a good week, and be good to each other. Bye, everyone.